Nigeria's democracy is moving backward. Honestly, we don't even have a democracy. We don't practice democracy in Nigeria. Honestly, what we have is authoritarian rule. These people are taking the people for granted. We only have democracy on paper, not in the real sense. And many people have come out to argue that the military regime was better than the so-called democracy that we're experiencing today. So bring it down to Nigeria, a country where you are not allowed to say your mind, a country where you cannot tell the politicians they are wrongdoing, a country where even the media houses are being subjected to some form of control, and you say we are practicing democracy, where a politician will boldly tell you to go to court if you don't like it, and if you get to court, you can't get justice. Do we really practice democracy? So Mr. Moghalu was on this platform and he spoke extensively to that. Just take a look for yourself.
I'll just keep it very brief. And that is that we should ask ourselves whether what we are practicing in the first place is democracy, or whether we have elections every 4 years. There's a difference between the two. When you talk about democracy, you're talking about also democratic institutions, which include the judiciary, other institutions of government functioning as independent institutions. So that's a very important point. The other question that we should also ask ourselves, since we're rounding up, is democracy an end in itself, or is it a means to an end? Do you have a real democracy on an empty stomach? If you have democracy and people are so poor that they cannot feed, but you have maybe what you might call a military dictatorship, many of the countries of Asia were not built as democracies. Their economies were built by military dictators. But those dictators were visionary dictators. There's a difference between a visionary and benign dictatorship and a dictatorship such as we've had in Africa that has tended to concentrate power in the hands of the military. Now, let's come back to General Babangida in closing. He was a very visionary president. Whatever you might disagree on some things, but he was visionary. He used a lot of intellectuals. He ruled with ideas and, elevated people who had ideas. What is our politics today? In our politics today, if you speak about ideas, they will say you're blowing grammar. That Bobo is just blowing grammar. So the quality of our democracy is going down, and we think we're practicing democracy. Look at the politicians. Yes, it is through the voter education process and through this matter of who are we as Nigerians. What is our worldview? What is our national philosophical foundation? We don't know who we are. We don't know where we have come from. We don't know where we are going. How can we come together in a democratic process if you have not addressed that basic question? And that comes back to the issue of leadership. Whoever has the responsibility today must be made to know that you must begin to lay this foundation and hand over the baton. We cannot wait forever until some messiah shows up. It doesn't work that way.
The political parties have not been able to help themselves to achieve the internal party democracy. And they are now allowing the judiciary to clean up the dirty mess they've left for themselves. And that's why, whilst other climes and jurisdiction will talk about political questions coming from party issues, the judiciary in Nigeria is invited to intervene. So whether parties have complied with their constitution, whether they've been able to conduct their elections, whether they've been able to conduct their primaries the way they ought to conduct them, amongst others. These are so many issues that the court has been invited to intervene, and that takes them, going by the electoral law, takes them about 180 days. And you can imagine the time frame wasted in trying to clean up what the political parties have not been able to achieve on their own. But going into the main issue of post-election disputes, I believe that the judiciary, they fared fairly well, because what would have been the contrary is that it will be resort to violence or mob action or anarchy, as the case may be. But because of the intervention of the judiciary, I believe that it has helped to stabilize the polity to a very large extent, because people now feel that win or lose, agree or not, they have an option, and the option is to go before the judiciary. And what have the judiciary been able to achieve? They've been able to have a blend of both technical and substantial justice. They've been able to rigorously interpret the electoral laws and the constitutions as it affects election. They've also been able to ensure that where parties are announced or candidates are announced in a way and manner they ought not to be, that it can be reversed. But the question you have posed is quite germane, in the sense that, is it really in the place of the judiciary to make a final proclamation in such a dispute, instead of invalidating it and calling for a fresh election? Is it in the place of the judiciary ultimately to announce another candidate? I believe that seems to be the issue that is bothering a lot of people, especially Nigerians. As far as the electoral law and the constitution are concerned, yes, the judiciary are right there. But one would have preferred a situation wherein, after such a vigorous interpretation of the law, the Supreme Court or any of the courts intervening can simply declare that the election is invalidated and there should be a fresh election. So, to that extent, we will now question the correctness or otherwise of some of those pronouncements. We know of some of the recent cases around the country and some other areas where people have questioned the Supreme Court in that regard, whether it is in their place to announce a candidate who obviously may not have come first, second, or third as the rightful winner of an election, instead of nullifying or invalidating that election. So the challenges are there. But give and take, we cannot rule out the fact that the judiciary has done well, and the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court of Nigeria is quoted extensively all over the world, in Africa, South Africa, and so on and so forth. But again, another issue is that the electoral laws seem to have made things a little bit more cumbersome. Kenya has including the new electoral law, because we question the fact that people, after months or years after the election, an election can now be nullified. And we have not seen it in many other places. We have not seen it in US, even Kenya. Odinga has just gone to court in Kenya, and the Supreme Court of Kenya is giving about 14 days for the case to be heard and disposed of, even before the inauguration of the president. We should be thinking of how we can achieve that, so that we can create the scenario whereby we can have the election and all the candidates put in place before the inauguration, anytime, whether it is in May or otherwise. So we have to be looking at that to see how we can correct that imbalance, because it does not seem to be working very well for our system. Thank you.
All right, then. Professor Moghalu, you're going to have the final word here, because we're completely out of time.
Thank you.
Then on democracy, I've heard views that appear contradictory. We want to zone what? Zone the right to serve. It is your turn to do what? There are some implied self-interest in all of that. And the one provocative question I want to make is that people must understand that to be a technocrat doesn't make you competent leader. The qualities of leadership don't flow from classroom. And I want to repeat that. And that is why sometimes in the US, both Republican and Democrat, if you watch CNN at the eve of the elections, they will say they have challenges getting an electable material. To be electable is not necessary to be educated, to be a professor, to be a technocrat. There are other leadership abilities. And I think one of the things IBB taught us is that you can unite the country by going around the 36 states and FCT. You will find competent, able technocrats to manage different aspects of the Nigeria polity, society, and economy. You don't have to be president to contribute. And that is why if anybody can have a compendium of those who play different responsible roles, policy-making roles in Nigeria or the IBB, you will find that virtually all the 774 local government can point to somebody who was appointed on account of what value it can add. So I want to salute you for bringing this, for organizing this thing, because we don't really celebrate leaders until they are no more. It's nice to be celebrated when you are around. As a union man, we had a opportunity to interact with IBB, and there are a few things I learned. If he doesn't get an answer for you, he creates a platform to keep talking while he is taking care of the answer. So he's not elected, he's not bound to allow conversation. He can decree, as military always, I decree as follows. And it's a law. But the country was encouraged to debate and debate and debate. And to be honest, not to debate. We are all somehow guilty. So I want to appeal to the panelists, because when I listen to people talk about it, I spent all my life until I became a governor interrogating power, questioning some of the decisions. And one of the IBB legacies, I'm not sure I agree with it or I don't agree, but he was a thinker. He believed that government cannot continue to run everything and set up TCPC or whatever it was to do privatization of what can be privatized, and government hold on what it can do best. Every other government has taken with privatization, even though some did it in a manner that is absolutely embarrassing, like the way the distribution companies were handed over to people who know next to nothing. So families were had to handle. So they did the privatization, but not in the manner that it was conceptualized and as provided for in the enabling act that set up the privatization.
All right.
So, short man, short speech. I want to thank you for the opportunity. But I thought that
please put your hands together.
knowing that IBB encouraged people of diverse background. Other IBB's economic team, you have Professor Aboyade, a seasoned conservative.
Yeah.
There you have Izemiro, tech communist. And then you have, between the two extremes, you have the liberals. So you have engagement, not in terms of Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, in terms of policy choices. And I think the media, I'm happy two of you are their channels and Arise.
Yes, sir.
You should also help. When people bring religion, shut it down and play up issues. Like you can notice, each time you ask, what is the solution? You don't get loud voices. What is the problem? Everybody shout it. We all know it. So when people come and ask you, where is this man from who wants to be governor? Where is this man from what? Tell them that is not what matters.
Thank you very much.
What matters is what will he do differently,
Yeah.
so that we stop lamenting and stop moving forward. Stop agonizing and start organizing. Nigeria will go on. Now I'm not here to lament. We have a future. And my children must have a future.
And
It's a
that's a
duty
good place
that we must
to-
perform.
I've listened attentively to the discussion of the panelists, but I think the missing link here is we are discussing about addressing the problems of this country and talking about the future. And I think the future should be education. Because if there is any legacy left for us by the colonialists, is education. And if we interrogate today, where is education in Nigeria? It remains a very big question. Therefore, I think it is about time all stakeholders in this country come together to try to see how we bring an end to the endless crisis in the educational system, especially the ASU strike. Because as I speak here, I am a victim of ASU strike. I spent 9 years in the university, so instead of 5 years.
To God be the glory forever and ever. Amen. The chairman of this very unique occasion, ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate the presentation by my lecturer, Professor Chibo, and the panelists.
Yes, so guys, these are some of the things we keep saying about Nigeria. Is it really democracy that we are practicing? Do we practice democracy? Is there any democracy in Nigeria? A democracy that does not allow for rule of law, a democracy that does not allow people's vote to count, a democracy that does not allow the people to choose their own leader, a democracy where a group of politicians decide what happens. Using INEC and the judiciary as their instrument, they can go to any length. So, but I'm happy that this topic is being discussed, honestly, because Nigeria appears not to be practicing democracy. Democracy we practice is only in book, not in the real sense, because in the real sense, there is no democracy in this country. So how do we start building a country that truly practices democracy? That's the question everybody has to answer. Because we can't continue this way. We can't continue this way of INEC not allowing us to decide who we want to vote for. You vote for this person, they force the other person to you. You vote and you, as in, oh my God, a whole lot is happening in this country, and it will be very difficult to fix things because INEC is involved. For the fact that INEC itself has not seen its mistakes and tried to amend it, then it will be very difficult. Even the recently conducted elections that they did in some places, we all saw how it went. Honestly, we all saw how it went, and that's a pure indication that INEC is not even ready to give Nigerians the best of what they want. So, guys, I don't know what what you think of this. Do you think Nigeria is practicing democracy, or do you think our democracy is yet to come? What's your take? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you.